Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host, joined this week by my blue collar badass, Matt. How's it going, man?
Hell yeah, Dylan. I'm glad to be back. We keep going on these stints where we don't record together for it seems like a very long time, but it's always fun to be back and actually talking to somebody else and not just my microphone.
Yeah, between riding in your truck and me doing it wherever I, get a spare minute in a hotel room to record, I get, like I was saying, I think on one of the episodes, like it's the glory of being A-list now is you're away from home more often than you used to be.
Yeah, for sure. That the truck episodes are always interesting. The audio kind of sucks, but kind of like you on a plane, I've got a lot of time behind the wheel of my new pickup, so might as well use it.
Yeah, no, dude, I have so much, like I'm running out of podcasts, books to listen to. And, I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're going to listen to the wind or, go to the old radio today.
Oh boy. I haven't had to go that far deep down the hole yet.
It's like going across the country when I've done a few of those trips, like, back in the day before, cell phones or any of that, when you had a atlas and your dad yelling at you on where we need to turn, and you're just on like I-80 for the next 1,000 miles. It's like, just keep going straight, looking out for a rest stop. But the only thing that you get is old like country western, or you can always rely on a gospel or a preacher station to come up in the middle of nowhere on the radio. That's about the only two things you're guaranteed is an old country western or some sermon. uh they'll find you.
Yep. Either that or you had the briefcase full of cassette tapes and you prayed to God that they wouldn't pull all the tape out and start despooling themselves in the middle of your trip. You're probably too young for those memories, but
no, well, so real quick one on that. So we were driving, God, it had to be a rental car from Denver up to, we did some fishing in Idaho, but it was like a family reunion trip. And this been probably late 90s, but Shania Twain had just come out with like her big, hit album or whatever, right?
yeah.
So it's Man Feels Like a Woman, all that kind of, it's Shania Twain. Everybody knows the songs. You know it. But in that we were driving and my sister loved that thing, and my dad, I don't know, somewhere around Montana was about to just huck that thing out the window. It was a cassette.
Just play it over and over again until it stops and then flip the tape.
A and B side.
That's right, buddy.
So yeah, I am of that generation.
Good deal.
But
I get better internet in the mountains than I do in places that are supposed to have great internet. So as I was saying, guys, hopefully this didn't crack up too much, but basically, as I was saying, a lot of the travel that I've been doing lately is for conferences, is to go and see people, because we do that again. And here in 2022 was the first Autodesk University that has occurred in 3 years. So 2019 was the last time that AU was in person, and frankly, I didn't really participate in the last two. It's virtual. I really want to see people, shake some hands, meet people, and do all that kind of good stuff of what being in person is for people. So the first thing that I really wanted to bring up and talk about today is like showing up matters. And I think it's something that we totally undervalue in going and see people, shaking hands, and and doing all that. Like a lot of good things happen when you can meet people, feedback instantly. And that's a lot of things that we just don't get in other forms of communication. So I guess, what do you have on that?
Well, especially given what I do, and the way I sell, it's not impossible to close a deal via Zoom. I've done it, by necessity, but it's certainly more difficult, and it's definitely not as fun. You lose so much of the human element of communication when you're on Zoom or on the phone or or something similar, versus when you're in person and face to face. And being able to read body language and really read the room, for lack of better terms, is so powerful and so important to most anything we do in our neck of the woods.
Yeah. I mean, getting out, seeing people, that whole deal is, I just had such better conversations in the last 2 weeks and seeing people at AU, right? Or that 3 days at AU. I had such better conversations, such better interactions with everybody than, the last 2 years. Like, it's good. We've built our relationship a lot over Zoom, but in the, times that we've spent together, that connection just deepens, being able to see people, shake hands, catch up. Granted, I still spend a lot of time on the phone with a lot of people, but there's something to say for being in person.
Yeah, for sure. And there's, the Zoom thing, it's got a place in business, right? It saves a lot of time. It can really boost efficiency. I did my rant a few weeks ago about having to travel, 2 hours to go to a planning commission meeting. That sort of stuff, I think, the Zoom aspects or options are perfect for. We were kind of rapping before we got on here today, and I was telling you a story. I was basically at a sales call with a current client, and a potential prospect happened to walk into the room, and now we start talking, and we've got another potential project coming out of this, and that sort of stuff, that organic creation of a relationship on the random, and it's random, right? It doesn't happen every time or most any time, but that never could have happened on Zoom. Like, the guy wouldn't have walked in the room and cuddled up next to my client on his desk chair to peek into the camera to see what we were talking about. It just wouldn't happen. And I think that speaks a ton to just the power of being in person and having the body language, having the actual physical connection, not like the physical mental connection.
Yeah. And kind of the next piece that I noticed anyway, and something I've been guilty of in the past, is kind of undervaluing the floor and overvaluing the bar, right? In that, people say that a lot of connections can be made at the bar. And I believe that is true. Like, I've made friends and all that kind of stuff. But the question too is, like, how long are those things going to last after the fact? You can have a good night, you can go out, you can have fun, all that kind of stuff. But I've never really known those relationships to last for a long time. And I think people don't spend enough time in especially in like conferences where you're trying to sell stuff or really make deals happen, or at least get your foot in the door to then have further conversations. And there's a difference in meeting people for the first time on the convention center floor or the bar versus like taking clients out to dinner and a good time, and like you're trying to deepen the relationship. Those are two very different things. I don't want to confuse the two, of like taking a client out that you already have a relationship and you're like trying to do more business with. Like, that's a very different deal than like trying to meet people and pick up clients at the bar.
Definitely. I mean, it's like picking up women too, right?
Same thing.
The quality of woman you typically pick up at the bar. But in terms of business development and building relationships, you're spot on. On kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, as I bought a stupid expensive pair of golf clubs this year, and I set about a goal to golf as many Friday afternoons as I possibly could. And it was twofold. One, because I sucked at golf and I wanted to try and get a little better. For the record, I still pretty much suck. But the bigger goal in that was, this gives me one-on-one or one-on-three time, depending on how we structured it, with whomever I want, whether that was a prospect or an existing client. I took a lot of our trade partners and specialty contractors out, and it, you shut the damn phones off and you just talk. And yes, golf takes forever, right? It's 2 hours for 9, it's 4 hours for 18 if you're moving at pace, but you get 2 hours or 4 hours of undivided attention between you and whomever you're with. And in my mind, there's not a better way to build and foster an existing relationship. It's a tough thing to do with brand new people you've never met, but even that, we did that a few times this year also, and I've got some leads out of it. I've got some people that I would be very willing and interested to hire onto my team from golfing for the first time with them. And it's a great way to interview. It's a great way to get to know people. So, whether you're at the golf course or on the exhibit hall floor, or, taking a hike with people, I think just focusing on true communication and actually fostering a relationship when you're at least moderately sober is really powerful to do. And it just helps us do what we do. And I'm sure you've probably had similar experiences, Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, being at this, being at Autodesk and being on the convention, like, frankly, man, I talked for 3 days straight. Like being there, being in the convention, talking to people, which was awesome. Like, it was probably one of the best conferences I've ever been to, talked to a ton of people. And those conversations, like, by the end of the day, man, I frankly was just beat. And I don't mind talking, but like by the end of the day, to have, to talk for 8-10 hours straight, with very little break, on my feet all day, I was just done. I go to the bar, and actually there was a guy who I talked to that day who sat like across from me, or kitty corner from me, from like the bar across the street. And I just wanted some food. I was drinking water so that I wasn't hungover for any of this. And like, he was apparently yelling across the bar, like cowabunga, which is not a word you like ever hear. And I just did not hear it. Like, I was just toned out and like just zoned out and checking email, like getting through the day. And he walk over and he's like, dude, do you not like hear us? I'm like, man, I'm sorry. I just, nothing. So, like, that's just how beat I was after talking to people all day. So I think too, it's going into like a lot of these things, knowing what you're getting. And to me, at the end of the night, having like just to sit at the hotel room, eat some food, like, and just chilling out for a couple hours before I went and did it all over again was just way better than, trying to be up until 2 a.m. and hungover and dragging like the next day to like the next person you're going to talk to, who is meeting you for the first time and you're, not your best. Like, I think that's just a bad showing,
For sure, man. And let me preface our conversation with, I don't think either one of us are bashing getting shit faced once in a while, but there's a time and place. And I've done a few conferences in the last couple of years with our company, and I went down to the Arete Summit in whenever that was, in May, and that was kind of the opposite. Like, there was a lot of time for networking and talking, don't get me wrong, but most of the time was spent learning and listening and really intently trying to hear what the different presenters and different people were saying. And it was kind of the same feeling, right? Like, you would start at whatever time, 8 or 9 in the morning, and we would go till 9 or 10 at night. And 10 years ago, me would probably have gone out and closed down the bar still, and then got up the next morning to do it all over again. But this time it was exactly what you said. Like, I'm drained mentally. My head can't take any more information right now. I'm just going to go sit down, chill out, watch some some Law and Order, because that's a universal constant when I travel. It's always seems to be on TV, and just go to bed. And it really helped me to get the most out of that situation in particular, but also when we've done trade shows, the same deal. Like, you gotta, first impressions are huge. And if you're dragging ass mentally and physically, you're going to look like it. And people pick up on that stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah, it just becomes not worth it, And again, there's a time and place for, grabbing some drinks, going crazy, but hopefully the person first before you do that, and don't ruin the relationship either. So that was just one thing I noticed in having going to conferences and just talking to people. There's a lot of talk of going out, of showing people a good time, and then trying to meet people and all this stuff. And I just got to thinking about, like, because this is like those nuanced conversations that I think a lot of people don't often have about, like, are people really going to make business decisions at 9-10 o'clock at night at the bar having drinks for their company, when they've just sat through an entire day of all this stuff? Or are they just ready to unwind, decompress a little bit? This is the trip that their company sends them on, so they're like, all the drinks are on the house anyway, and like, they're there to let loose a little bit from the pent up pressure that they feel on the job all the time, right? And I think we don't often think of that, like, what are people actually going through, and what do they want out of a conference?
I think you bring up a very interesting distinction right there. And it's one that I've noticed, and I don't think you and I have actually talked about it before, but there's a definite difference in attitudes and mannerisms and the way people act at those sort of shows, those sort of events, between the people that are there, like you and I, who are business owners, who are there, for the true gut purpose of the conference, and to network and to sell, to build relationships and all that, versus the people who are sent there. I went to a Parks and Rec conference last March in Traverse City, and I was there to sell Schaefer Construction, to meet new people, and to discuss our options and our portfolio of recreational products or recreational product types rather. But you could tell people who were there that, like, all right, man, this is my free annual vacation. My work just paid for me to be up in beautiful Traverse City for 3 days. I'm gonna get blackout drunk every night. I don't really care if I meet people or not that aren't with my little club. And I'll go to some of the classes. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll sleep in. You can pick those people out a mile away when you're the guy there. Like, all right, this is my livelihood. I'm here for a reason. I paid to be here, not to come and just shoot the shit and hang out, but I paid to be here for an actual tangible purpose.
Yeah. And so I think going into these conferences, going into these deals, like, you've got to have a reason to be there, right? And if it's to have fun and let loose, then that's what it is, right? But if you're there for something else or to get better, understand what you're going there for, what you want to get out of it. That 10 minutes by yourself will give you a lot of clarity on the conferences, on your outcomes, and what you want to get out of it. And then two, this kind of leads into like the third and fourth point that I've got is, man, take the time to explore these cities. You're going to Traverse. I went to New Orleans for Autodesk, and I got up at a decent hour. Again, I was not hungover for any of this. So I went and walked the city, and man, like, the French Quarter is beautiful, and they take care of it, man. Like, they're out there pressure washing in the mornings. They're scraping off the sidewalks. They're, like, there was no trash anywhere. Like, it was pretty cool, to see this level of care for the city, to see the old French Quarter. And, I bet that more than half of the people that went there, they might have seen the French Quarter at night. They for sure didn't see it during the day. and like take these opportunities to go and like explore, to go walk the cities, to take these times to, as you're out and about and traveling, to go and see things, man, to slow down a little bit, to take that time and, you know, take the 30 minutes to go for a walk. It just opens your eyes to, you know, there's more to life than that convention center hall or that classroom or that client's office or whatever else. You know, there's more outside of that.
Absolutely, man. And that's one of the things I've learned to do now in the last couple of years. I used to travel, as you know, I used to travel a ton in a previous life, and I was never getting in the bars at night, but I was also very much so the guy that, you know, I'm very introverted by nature. I don't trust a whole lot of people. I'm a wee bit paranoid being in new situations. So I would get my work done. I would get room service and go crash in my room and get up the next morning and leave. And I would never, or not never, but I would very rarely take the time to do what you just said, to actually get out and, you know, take a look at where the hell I'm at and see, you know, just viewing the architecture and, you know, the different infrastructure of a different city it's valuable, and it's got a kind of a calming sense to it too. But I would never, ever do that. So now I do make a point whenever I travel, which for me now is not very often, and I'm fine with that, but I do try and get out and at least get a little bit of the flavor of wherever the hell it is I'm at, you know?
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, going out and walking around like New Orleans, I walked around a good chunk of New Orleans, like pretty much all downtown. Like I stayed on Canal Street and, you know, walked up and down that and then through the French Quarter and just kind of random streets, you know, all around. And I needed to get a TV and some brochures like that done for the conference. So like I walked to, you know, Office Depot and around, and man, there was like no trash anywhere. Like I was amazed at just the cleanliness of New Orleans. You know, they were actively trying to, you know, push away panhandling, and sure there was some homelessness, but nothing like crazy. It was in, you know, very small areas. It wasn't bad. You didn't have people with like severe mental problems. But again, like most people would never get that flavor of the city, you know, having just been to the convention and staying at the hotel right next door. Like it was just neat to walk around and, you know, get a feel for it. And like I walked by, you know, like Tulane University's right there, and you see all the like old streetcars, right? They have all like the trolley streetcars run around as like part of their public transit. Like just a neat flavor of it, you know, and then talking to some Uber drivers, and there's a festival every weekend. Like New Orleans is apparently the city of festivals. Like it's beignet or just cuz, or, you know, margaritas, or, you know, bayou, or, you know, alligator. Like they had a festival I think for everything. But again, like you wouldn't know that if you didn't talk to people, if you didn't go out, if you didn't see. And I think that's just a big thing that more people should do.
Yeah, without a doubt. And doing it during the day, you know, doing it when you've got some free time, and you know, if you're not sleeping off the night before, you should be able to find some time in the sunshine to get out there, and you never know what you're going to come across or who you're going to meet doing that. I mean, that's kind of the overarching theme of the show today is communication, and actually face to face and being in person. And, you know, you never know who you bump into, who's, you know, your next prospect or your next client or your next employee or partner or whatever. I mean, you don't get those random opportunities like the dude walking into my meeting. You don't get those if you don't get yourself out there, and if you're not out walking around.
Yeah, it's amazing. Not to mention doing it during daylight, so it's a heck of a lot safer than doing it at night.
There's that too.
And then the last thing to kind of close this out is show and tell. You know, now I know we did this in kindergarten, first grade, and elementary school, where you brought some stuff in and showed it and told the class, right? But it wasn't just story time. It was that you brought something in to show and tell. And I think far too often in the construction world, we just tell. You know, maybe we have some pretty pictures, maybe we have some other renderings or images, or on occasion a model. But we don't do like the 3D models that they did, 20, 30 years ago, when you had physical models that you literally built. You had model builders that built these designs and buildings to show off and really had something to show where people could get up and physically touch and move around and look at things. It just created a different dynamic that we really don't have today. There's a different level of emotion with a physical model than any of this digital stuff. As much as I love digital and the ways that we can communicate and the ease and speed, there is a very different emotion to having something physical. And you're seeing people react very differently to, again, being in person than to the Zoom meetings that we have where people are not paying attention and they're just over it. So I think doing things that are physical that people can touch and feel. Like I printed 25 brochures, which I know doesn't sound like much, but I gave them all away. Like people wanted them, right? They wanted something physical, something tangible. I handed out more cards than anyone else. Like, yeah, sure, there were some people without cards, but more and more people had them. And again, it's not something that most people do these days. So like having a business card, was a thing. And so again, having something to show and tell about, right? For me, it was demoing software to, again, show people, walk them through it, talk to them about it. Is very different than just showing them or just telling them. So that combination is awfully powerful for any presentation that you're giving. Again, whether you're on the architecture side or the construction side.
For sure, man. I mean, I remember not many because I'm not that much older than you, but I do remember a few sales presentations back in the day where, we had the physical 3D models, the foam cutouts of buildings. And, looking back on it now, it seemed a little ridiculous at the time, but looking at it now, like, man, that was a cool way to explain to people what we were going to build for them, right? You could actually, use your pencil and kind of point to different areas and show them where their office was going to be in the building, or where the shop manager was going to sit, and that sort of stuff. And, it's almost like getting back to a primal state of humanity. And maybe the last, 2.5 years will turn out to be a good thing for that reason. Like, I think, we gained a lot of trust in technology, or a lot of efficiency and use on, Zoom and Teams and everything. But I think people are just kind of done with it. And, it's good to see getting back to the show and tell, getting back to the, actually being able to touch and feel things and have conversations in person, and back to the way of living that, humans are really meant to do. And maybe I'm getting philosophical because that kind of feels like it, but I don't know. I just think it's cool, man. I think you're spot on. It to be able to actually to show people what you're talking about, whether you're selling or just showing or using an example, and while you're explaining it is hugely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like in the software world, right, like you kind of have to really show people what it can do and doing it in real time, right? So I did a lot of like real time demos for people on the show floor. I made a world of difference, right? They don't think they can see that nothing's like, I'm not manipulating anything. I'm not doing it some like, sleight of hand or whatever. It's like legitimate, I'm running software on a building that's got nothing in it, and then 2 minutes later, it's fully populated with content. Like you could see it, you'd see all my movements. Like there's nothing, there's no like wizard behind the curtain, right? It's not like a video that's playing and you're like, you don't know or what tricks are being done or anything like that. And I think, to a point, like renderings and all that stuff, again, very helpful, very informational, right? It's what you put on the billboard out front to let people know something's coming if you're going to do that. But there's also a point of like having something that they can hold and feel. And it's why we still have like actual printed documents, and we still bring those to meetings. People like to look at them.
Yeah. And I would bet in your scenario at the trade show, I would bet just the act of you physically manipulating your software and showing, whomever, what it does and what you can do with it, I would almost guarantee that attracted more people to come over. and crowds start forming that way, because specifically in the trade show setting, you know, every other booth has a video screen playing, you know, something on loop of whatever it is they're selling. And that's fine and good, but it starts to kind of just blend into the ether after a while, especially in a big trade show like where you were at, where there's, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of vendors there. But when you see somebody doing something physically, whether it's, you know, doing what you do with your software and auto-populating, building electrical systems, or it's a guy, you know, demonstrating how to use the new cordless Milwaukee circular saw. It doesn't matter. It's something different, and it catches people's eye and it catches their attention. And that's the best way to sell. You catch someone's attention, and now you have a captive audience, and you can tell them everything you want to tell them, and you're not competing against everybody else that's under the that's in the conference hall.
Yeah. So two big things on that. One, I mean, I drew crowds. You know, there'd be 5-10 people around, which in a trade show is like, it's huge to have that
It's
many
enormous.
people in a little 10 by 10 booth. But two, I opened it up, right? So my little, you know, cart thing was in the back of the booth. It was open. I didn't have anything between me and the person, right? We're standing there toe to toe. And a lot of people at trade shows will put the booth, the thing, they would put a desk, something between them and whoever they're talking to. It creates a wall, a barrier between you and them. It creates you as adversaries versus friends versus somebody you want to talk to. And I think a lot of people make that mistake in various ways, right? You sit across from your client at the table, not next to them. You're, you know, not standing toe to toe, not looking them eye to eye. There's a lot of things that like innately are in our DNA and how we assess threats, right? So one of those is like, you need to put your hands on the table and you don't put them under the table because it shows that you are not armed, right? This is like an innate DNA thing. Not to get too deep on a lot of the psychology stuff, but like being very open, being very clear, like people then don't see you as a threat, right? They see you as a friend, even though they might not ever think that consciously. That is a subconscious piece that they like are thinking and going through. So the more that you, like obstacles and barriers that you can remove between you and somebody else creates more of a bond to you, which is why Zoom and all this stuff is like difficult because you don't create bonds, right? There's still a disconnect between you and them. But this is why going like golfing, right? You're sitting in the cart, you're leg to leg, right? You're sitting right next to each other. You're going over bumps, you know, like there's connection, there's touch, there's no barrier between you and them doing things like that. And that's why like having or removing as much barriers as you can, like a trade show, all that stuff, like all that for me got moved to the back of the booth. Like I'm right next to the person as I'm demoing stuff, and that creates again a big connection. It draws more crowds because more people are up front, you know, and then more people are curious, and it goes through like that. But you just look down the line, and everybody else was standing behind their thing, you know, twiddling their thumbs on their phone, whatever. And this is one of the other things, real quick too, is like when you're at a show, or maybe you're going into meetings for a big presentation or anything like that, say hi to anybody and everybody that you walk past. And the reason that you do that is so that you warm up, so you're getting the jitters, the bugs, the whatever cobwebs out of your system before you go and talk to the people that truly matter. Right. But this is like at a conference, like the people setting up the, you know, food for the day, or the catering, or the coffee, or whatever, or another vendor, like, hey, how's it going? You know, good morning, welcome, you know, how are you today? Right. Like you get all that out of your system, and you just get in the habit of talking to people, so that talking to the next person and just saying hi and how's your show going, and, you know, like, what are you getting out of this? Right. Like that's something that is now easier to do as the day goes on. And I think a lot of people really screw that up. They're waiting for the big fish, when, you know, if you just said hi to everybody, then it wouldn't be such a big deal.
Yeah, just it's being a good person, right? And creating that good karmic energy and karmic deposits in your account. You know, I do that all the time when I'm at those shows. I talk to everybody. I'll have conversations with the dudes putting out the catering for lunch. And you just gotta, you know, you get out or you get back what you put out. You know, it's a basic rule of life. And, you know, to your point, you know, shaking off the cobwebs and getting back into the swing of things is one thing for sure. And that's got some weight to it, but just being a good person and being a overall friendly and outgoing individual, it pays off in dividends, especially in a setting like that, where, you know, 9 times out of 10, people just walk right past you and they kind of give a quick glance at whatever free shit you have on the table, you know, with your squish balls and your beer koozies or whatever. And if they like it, they'll grab one and they might, you know, try and fake a conversation, but really they just want to get the hell out of there. When you're open and kind of jovial and having those conversations, you reel those people in, and people want to be, they want to hear stories, right? They want to be talked to like a human. They don't want to be sold all the time. And when you start practicing that from the very beginning, from, you know, the person behind the counter when you're checking in at the hotel that day, to the person serving the, you know, chicken cutlets, to the person walking through in a suit grabbing business cards, it's all good, and it's all part of that human experience that we've been talking about, you know, for the last bit here today.
Yeah, man, I think I said hi to everybody. And so here's my other trade show secret while we're giving the rest of them away is Bowl Mints. Like, Bowl Mints is one of those little trade show things. I mean, so I have like string backpacks and brochures, but Bowl Mints, man, that's like the thing that people are looking for. You know, it's a simple little thing. It's easy. And then, yeah, like, dude, I talked to everybody. You know, catering guys came up, and of course they grabbed mints too. And it's like, yeah, man, sure. It's like, here you go. I need to get rid of all this stuff, you know, please. But I ended up having a conversation with a guy for an hour. I knew he wasn't buying maybe 5 minutes into it, but I just enjoyed the conversation for an hour, and it was worth it to me, you know, like, to have a good conversation with a just good dude, you know, just an engineer, civil engineer. So I know I'm not selling you anything, but that's fine. We're here to talk about other stuff, you know, and life, and line's not cheap, and because he was wearing a hat. And it's like, cool, man, you know, it's good to see you here. Glad you're out and about, you know, and just a good human conversation. I think we miss a lot of those, and don't have them, you know, as often as we should.
That's what it's all about, man. I'm glad to see people are getting back to it. I mean, it's been a long road, and it's moved a lot slower than I think most of us wanted it to, but I think most people are kind of fed up with the staying apart at this point. And, you know, like we said, Zoom and Teams and all that shit has its place. That's how we do this, right? You and I couldn't do this show without it. But having those in-person conversations and getting out and showing face and seeing people and shaking hands, it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, man, there were 10,000 people at Autodesk University, you know, and I went to a marketing conference the week before that had 5,000 in the room. So yeah, I mean, people are back out in force. And I think when I was in Orlando the week before Autodesk, there were like 4 conferences in town for a bunch of different stuff. So I'm sure there was probably 20,000 people in Orlando for various conferences. You know, people are back.
That's awesome.
Any final words? I mean, I've got some other stuff, but I think we can cover it in another show. And again, if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, you can get it for free. It's in the links here. Physical newsletter will send out to your door, and some of the stuff that we talked about is going to be in there this month as well. But any final words, Matt?
Yeah, guys, I mean, I would definitely echo that. I would sign up for Dylan's newsletter. I get it. Actually, he still sends it to me, and it's one of the few pieces of mail I get that I look forward to reading every month. So definitely do that. But guys, share the show. We don't do ads on this. We don't We don't sell you a bunch of crap. We're here trying to help and trying to put new ideas and new thoughts into your minds that might make your life in the construction world a little bit better, a little bit easier. Bigger, better, faster, more. We need you to share the show. It helps us keep growing at the pace we need to, and it helps us keep showing up.
100%. So guys, share this, just screenshot it, tag us, and whatever, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook works for us. And then again, the newsletter's free. Like, I don't spam you with anything. You just get a letter mailed to your house, or wherever you want, to your office every month. So there's that.
And real quick too, we haven't really talked about this, Dylan, but one of these days we are going to get back into doing more interview-based shows with guests. So if you guys have anyone you want to hear on the show, or if you perhaps want to be on the show, get in touch with Dylan or myself and we will make it happen. We're both busier than hell these days, but with a little bit of scheduling ahead of time, we can still set up a three-way Zoom call and get it done. So if you're interested, reach out and let's see what happens from there.
Absolutely, guys. We just want to bring you more, industry professionals, people that are doing cool things and having just cool conversations. So that's what we aim to do here. And if there's any other topics you guys want to hear, anything you want us to cover on the show, whether it's Matt, myself, us together, whatever that ends up being, again, our contact info is all below here in the show notes. So just reach out. So with that, guys, that is going to be this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Until next time.